Coronation Street is to air a special episode dedicated to the rugby league legend and motor neurone disease campaigner Rob Burrow, who died last month.
Well, since the spring, the soap has been telling the story of Paul Foreman, who was diagnosed with MND, and the challenges he and those around him face.
The special episode this week will follow Paul, whose speech has deteriorated, spending a day with his husband, Billy. Let's take a look. Well, joining us now here in the studio, we have Peter Ash, who plays Paul, along with Daniel Brocklebank, who plays Billy. Morning, both.
Morning.
Good morning.
What an incredible episode, an incredible storyline. Just tell us about this particular scenario and why it was important to tell this story from this angle.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've been doing this MND storyline for about a year and a half now. And I think when we both read this special episode, we knew it was going to be something really special. It follows Billy and Paul throughout the whole episode. We also hear Paul's inner monologue, which I think is massively important to show that, you know, the mind is still there 100%, despite the body not being. And I just think it's really important to show that. And yeah. And
this is one of the really horrible things about motor neuron, many horrible things about motor neuron disease that some people don't actually always know, which is that the person who has been diagnosed, the person living with it, mentally hasn't changed. It's a physical change, not a mental one.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so I guess the story is one of frustration.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you know, you'll see through the scenes, you know, it's the frustration of not being able to communicate, you know, what you're thinking. And even a carer who can interpret most things, you know, sometimes they will mishear something as well. And, you know, that must be heartbreaking. But, you know, I'm just glad we're able to kind of shine a light on that, really.
And Daniel, for you, there's a personal connection to this story as well, isn't there?
Yeah, my grandfather had motor neurone disease. And as a result, I've been working with the MND Association for the last 23 years. I'm an ambassador for the charity, so fundraise for them and do, you know, a fair amount for them. So when this storyline was initially pitched to us, I was surprised to learn that they had the producers, writers, no idea of my connection to the illness or the charity. So it's been strange to have this storyline fall at, you know, our feet, but very pleased that it has done because it you know, this is a subject that's been very close to me and my family for the last 2 decades.
And it's about portraying the role of a carer.
Yes.
That is so important in this relationship too, isn't it? Because we know the toll it can take on everybody else around the person that's facing that diagnosis too.
MND affects everybody who surrounds the person who is living with MND, as well as, you know, it's a all-encompassing thing. Your life becomes about caring for them 24/7.
And Peter, I know that the storyline has been very much inspired by Rob Burrow and his diagnosis. How did you prepare for the long journey? Because this is going to be a long journey, isn't it? How did you prepare for that?
Yeah, well, I knew next to nothing about MND when I was told we were doing this storyline, so it was a big learning curve for me. But, you know, we were put in contact with the MND Association straight away. Dan was a great source of information as well, and you know, getting involved with the charities, meeting people living with MND. Yeah, we were lucky enough to meet Rob and Lindsay. They came in to the studio to see us, and yeah, it was great. So yeah, I had to learn a lot really to take on this role, but yeah, kind of feel grateful that they trusted us with the storyline, really.
Yeah, and that trust is so important, isn't it? Because you've got to portray this well.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of pressure, especially when it's something that real people live with in their lives. So, you know, we just wanted to get that right, really, didn't we? And make sure we portray it correctly.
Yeah, the research department, the writers, they've done an incredible job.
It's been amazing.
Having lived a very similar experience in real life, it's given me, and I suppose us, a real confidence in knowing that we are getting it right, that we are portraying this correctly, because it's important. You're telling real people's stories. So.
And from your own experience, what are the frustrations and the difficulties when caring for somebody who has motor neurone disease? Because I imagine there are many levels.
There are many. I mean, I think one of the main difficulties is getting the housing adaptations sorted in time. So people needing a stair lift, for example, by the time that stair lift and the funding for that stair lift arrives, they're beyond needing the stair lift. They need that and something else. So that's something that really is frustrating. And I think also what we're telling in this story is that people, again, like we said, assume that the brain isn't working. So I'm hoping that this episode will really highlight what it is like for somebody who lives with MND.
What do you want people to go away from this episode? Having learnt, understood?
Yeah, absolutely. Just, you know, kind of understanding a bit more about what it is like to live with MND and to live with someone who has MND. I mean, like I said, I knew very little about this before I started. I imagine a lot of people still don't. So it would just be great to, you know, kind of raise awareness and keep banging that drum for MND.
Well, someone we are very good friends with here on Breakfast is Jeff Burrow, Rob Burrow's dad. And Jeff has shared some of his thoughts on the episode. He says this: for Coronation Street to run a storyline about MND must have been a hard decision, but they have tackled this horrible disease with a very balanced storyline that reflects the struggles that the MND sufferers and their loved ones are going through. As a family, we pray that this episode will be watched by millions and continues to raise awareness of this most heartbreaking of diseases. Thank you, Coronation Street.
That's amazing.
Yeah, well, we hope the same. You
Yes.
know, I think, like Pete said, when we started this story, he didn't know much about MND. And I think, certainly with everything that Rob's managed to achieve, that teamed with our storyline, in the last 2 years, I've seen more awareness for MND than I've ever seen in the 2 decades that I've been working alongside the MND Association. 6 people a day in the UK are diagnosed. It affects around 1 in 300 people, so it's a lot more prevalent than people realise.
And one of the things I know Rob was very much concerned about was not people who are in the public eye who are diagnosed. He's always said, didn't he, this was for the postman, the lollipop lady, the teacher, the person in the street or your neighbour.
Yeah.
How much of an impact do you think this might have in the wider public?
Hopefully, very much so. It's certainly got people. The thing is, with a show like Coronation Street, you're in people's living rooms, so therefore you're sparking conversations. We are an entertainment programme, but we also have the capacity to educate as well. So hopefully it has introduced MND, you know, and discussions around MND to a new audience.
Peter, Daniel, thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing it. That special episode of Coronation Street is dedicated to Rob Burrow. Will air this Friday, 8 o'clock on ITV.
Great picture. I love that picture.
Thank you very much for having us on.
You're so welcome.
Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.